There was a moment in Hollywood when Cameron Diaz seemed invincible, the luminous star of rom-coms, blockbusters, and best-selling book deals. She dominated screens, headlines, and box offices. But at the height of her fame, she made a decision that shocked the industry. She walked away. Left behind were red carpets, script pages, premieres, and instead she chose peace, family, and a radically different kind of life. What really made her leave the spotlight? And what has she found now? In the quiet spaces where cameras don't follow, this is the story of how Cameron Diaz swapped celebrity for serenity and how the life she built afterward might surprise you. Cameron Diaz's rise in Hollywood was swift and spectacular. She went from relative anonymity to box office powerhouse, comedies, action films, voice roles in huge animated franchises, endless spin-offs, worldwide fame. She mastered the art of stardom charm, charisma, marketability. For years, she seemed to have it all. But behind the public glamour, she carried something else. Fatigue. A fatigue that came not just from working hard, but from being seen. As she later revealed, the constant travel, long days on set, the avalanche of publicity, it all added up. She began to feel as though she'd given pieces of her life away. Time with friends, quiet mornings, true private moments. The roles were fun, the scripts good, the success undeniable, yet she felt hollow. The turning point came when she realized she had become an actress functioning on autopilot, prioritizing work over authenticity, roles over rest, visibility over well-being. When she chose to step back, it wasn't failure, it was intention. She said she needed to reclaim her life. She needed to reconnect with the parts of herself that Hollywood had loved on screen but ignored off it. The decision surprised the industry. But for her, it felt overdue. She didn't want to stop acting because she lost love for it. She wanted to act when it felt whole, not hollow. And so, as the cameras kept rolling for others, Cameron Diaz quietly left the set. She didn't announce a dramatic exit. She simply turned off the engine and shifted gears. The star who once lit up theaters began lighting up her own life instead. Every celebrity reaches a crossroads, that quiet, often invisible moment when the applause starts to feel like noise. For Cameron Diaz, that moment arrived in 2014, though it wasn't born from crisis, scandal, or burnout. It came from clarity. "I just realized I wasn't making decisions for myself anymore," she would later explain. "Hollywood was running my life." Her schedule was relentless, one blockbuster after another, endless interviews, red carpets, magazine covers. She was working for everyone else, studios, agents, audiences, but not for herself. Beneath the surface of success, she felt like her own life had been outsourced. That realization didn't come with anger. It came with quiet resolve. She didn't want to disappear. She wanted to reclaim. Friends say she had always been introspective, grounded, and self-aware. So when she stepped away, it wasn't impulsive, it was spiritual. She wanted mornings without call times, meals without makeup teams, and a sense of peace that couldn't be achieved through fame. "I needed to know who I was without all that," she said. Her final films, The Other Woman and Annie, reflected a lighter, comedic energy. But behind the laughter, she was already preparing for a different kind of performance. Her real life. Within months, she stopped taking new roles. People assumed it was temporary, but she meant it. What's remarkable is that she didn't leave out of bitterness. She spoke lovingly about the career that made her who she was, acknowledging its blessings while recognizing its cost. She simply wanted to grow in ways the camera couldn't capture. That courage to walk away from the world's applause to find her own peace is what truly defines her story. In the years after her retirement, Cameron Diaz didn't vanish, she evolved. While the public assumed she'd gone quiet, she was living more fully than ever before. She began exploring health, nutrition, and mindfulness, diving into what she later called the science of being alive. She co-authored The Body Book and The Longevity Book, both bestsellers that focused on women's wellness, aging, and the connection between self-care and strength. Through writing, she discovered a new voice, one not dependent on characters or scripts. She was no longer performing for others, she was speaking with others. Her definition of success shifted dramatically. It was no longer about fame or fortune, but about balance, time, and authenticity. She built a home life centered around simple joys: cooking, gardening, laughter with friends, long walks with her husband, musician Benji Madden. "For the first time, I feel whole," she said in an interview years later. In many ways, her departure from Hollywood wasn't an ending, it was a reset. She didn't renounce her past, she reclaimed her future. She began investing in herself emotionally, spiritually, and even professionally, founding the organic wine company Avaline with her friend Catherine Power, a business rooted in sustainability and health rather than spectacle. Cameron had always played roles where her characters found freedom. Now, she was living one of her own. Her journey shows that sometimes the bravest act of success is not climbing higher, but stepping away when you've reached the peak and learning to breathe again. The woman who once seemed inseparable from the Hollywood spotlight found something infinitely brighter: contentment. In 2015, Cameron Diaz married Benji Madden in a private ceremony at home, surrounded by close friends. Unlike the grand celebrity weddings of her peers, theirs was intimate, personal, and real, a reflection of the simplicity she had come to value. Their relationship became the foundation of her new life. Together, they focused on building peace instead of publicity. Cameron described Benji as her anchor: calm, spiritual, and genuine, someone who saw her not as an icon, but as a human being. That love grounded her in a way no studio ever could. Then, in 2019, came the moment that redefined her entire world: the birth of their daughter, Raddix. After years of navigating life under scrutiny, Cameron became a mother quietly, joyfully, and entirely on her own terms. She spoke about how motherhood changed her perspective completely. "It's the best thing that ever happened to me," she said. "It's everything I waited for." Motherhood didn't bring her back to Hollywood. It confirmed why she'd left it. She wanted to give her child the one thing she never truly had: normalcy. No flashing cameras, no constant pressure to perform, just love, laughter, and presence. In her own words, "I wanted to be available for my family, to wake up when they need me, not when a director calls action." Today, her happiness isn't measured in premieres or paychecks, but in peaceful mornings and quiet nights. She traded fame for fulfillment, and she's never looked back. Stepping away from Hollywood didn't mean Cameron Diaz stepped away from ambition. She simply redefined what success looked like, and it no longer involved spotlights or scripts. Instead, she focused on creating something that reflected her values. The result was Avaline, a clean, organic wine company she co-founded in 2020 with entrepreneur Catherine Power. Avaline wasn't just another celebrity brand. It was a reflection of Cameron's personal philosophy: transparency, balance, and authenticity. She wanted to create something that people could enjoy guilt-free, knowing exactly what was in their glass. "Wine is joy," she said, "but I wanted it to be honest joy." The company's success was immediate, but Cameron wasn't chasing profit. She was chasing purpose, something she'd always lacked in the relentless pace of Hollywood. Her approach to business mirrored her approach to life: thoughtful, grounded, and collaborative. She often said that being her own boss allowed her to reclaim time and energy she once gave to studios and executives. Now, she poured that energy into something sustainable, not just environmentally, but emotionally. Unlike many stars who launch brands as side projects, Cameron built Avaline as a lifestyle, not a label. It aligned with her broader commitment to wellness, which she explored in her best-selling books about aging, nutrition, and health. She wasn't performing anymore, she was participating in life. Avaline's success proved that reinvention doesn't mean retreat. Cameron Diaz didn't leave Hollywood because she was done working. She left because she wanted to work on her own terms. In doing so, she built an empire defined not by box office numbers, but by integrity and joy. In a culture obsessed with youth, Cameron Diaz became a quiet revolutionary. She stopped caring about the impossible standards that Hollywood imposed, standards she had once embodied. "I don't miss having to be perfect all the time," she admitted. "It's exhausting trying to meet other people's expectations of beauty." For most of her career, she had been celebrated as one of the most beautiful women in the world, a title that came with enormous pressure. Aging, in the Hollywood lens, was often treated like failure, but Cameron flipped the narrative. She began speaking openly about the grace and liberation that comes with growing older. She shared her belief that real beauty has nothing to do with appearance and everything to do with energy, peace, and authenticity. In her books and interviews, she emphasized self-acceptance, not self-criticism. "We earn our lines," she said. "They tell our story. I'm proud of mine." Cameron's honesty resonated with millions of women who had watched her since her "There's Something About Mary" days. They saw in her not a fading star, but a woman finally free from the pressure to remain frozen in time. She replaced anti-aging with pro-living. She has said that she no longer spends hours in makeup chairs or scrutinizes her reflection on camera. Instead, she spends her days moving her body for joy, eating well for nourishment, and laughing often. "I don't worry about how I look," she said. "I worry about how I feel." By choosing authenticity over aesthetics, Cameron Diaz became a new kind of icon, not the untouchable beauty, but the relatable one. She didn't just age gracefully, she redefined what grace means. For nearly a decade, Cameron Diaz stayed true to her decision to leave Hollywood. But in 2022, headlines erupted. She was coming back. After years of saying she was retired, she announced her return in a Netflix action comedy alongside Jamie Foxx titled Back in Action. The world was stunned and curious. Why now? Her answer was simple: joy. Cameron said the opportunity felt right because it wasn't about pressure or image, it was about fun. "Jamie's energy reminded me why I loved this in the first place," she said. She was returning not out of necessity, but out of balance. For the first time, acting was a choice, not an obligation. The comeback symbolized something deeper than career revival. It showed healing. She wasn't coming back to reclaim fame. She was coming back because she'd made peace with it. Cameron had done the inner work, and now she could step into the spotlight without losing herself. Her fans saw the announcement not as nostalgia, but as triumph proof that walking away doesn't mean shutting the door forever. Sometimes it means stepping out long enough to find who you are. So when you return, you bring your whole self with you. Cameron Diaz didn't just return to Hollywood, she returned to herself. Cameron Diaz's post-Hollywood life is not about escape, it's about intention. She often says that stepping away from acting gave her the space to ask a question she had never truly considered: what actually makes me happy? For most of her career, happiness had been tied to achievement, opening weekends, critical acclaim, awards. But the more she achieved, the less fulfilled she felt. Fame gave her everything except peace. When she left, she decided to rewrite her personal definition of success. "I used to think joy was something you earned," she reflected. "Now, I know it's something you choose." Her days no longer revolve around scripts or schedules, but around small, meaningful rituals: cooking breakfast for her family, spending quiet mornings in the garden, talking to friends without the intrusion of cameras or agents. She calls it the luxury of presence. Cameron has spoken about how hustle culture glorifies exhaustion, especially for women. She wanted no part of it anymore. "I realized I had spent more of my life performing for others than living for myself," she said. Today, her focus is on balance and gratitude. She meditates daily, practices mindfulness, and treats self-care not as indulgence but as necessity. Her mantra has become simple: protect your peace at all costs. Her life now moves at a slower, more deliberate pace, not because she's retired, but because she's finally free. And perhaps that's the most radical thing she's done yet: prove that walking away from the world's applause can lead you closer to yourself. Cameron Diaz spent decades embodying beloved characters: the charming girl next door, the fierce heroine, the comic genius. But the role that transformed her most didn't come from a script, it came from motherhood. When she and Benji Madden welcomed their daughter, Raddix, in late 2019, Cameron's world shifted completely. She often describes becoming a mother as a spiritual awakening, a rediscovery of what truly matters. "It's the best thing that's ever happened to me," she said. "I finally understand love in its purest form." Her approach to parenting is as intentional as her retreat from Hollywood. She and Benji have chosen to keep their daughter out of the public eye, protecting her from the pressures and exposure Cameron herself endured from such a young age. "She deserves to write her own story," Cameron explained. Motherhood also changed her sense of time. She often talks about how every day with her daughter feels precious, how she doesn't want to miss a moment. "I've waited my whole life for this," she said, "and now I just want to be fully present." Even in interviews, her voice softens when she speaks about family. She calls her home life sacred, filled with laughter, music, and warmth. Gone are the days of press tours and premiere gowns. Now, it's bedtime stories, backyard picnics, and morning cuddles that define her happiness. For Cameron, being a mother isn't a chapter, it's the masterpiece she was always meant to create. Today, Cameron Diaz lives a life few expected, not glamorous, but deeply fulfilling. There are no red carpets, no relentless schedules, no paparazzi chases through airport terminals. Instead, her life is slow, grounded, and intentional, and it's exactly what she always wanted. She wakes up without alarms. She cooks her own meals. She reads, writes, travels quietly, and chooses projects that nourish her soul rather than her resume. "I've never been happier," she admitted. "Not because I'm doing less, but because what I do now means more." Her home in California has become her sanctuary filled with plants, art, laughter, and family. She describes her days as peaceful yet purposeful, where simplicity feels like luxury. The same woman who once defined cool, effortless stardom now champions contentment and authenticity. What surprises most people is how normal she has become and how much she loves it. Friends say she's the happiest she's ever been, living proof that fulfillment doesn't come from fame, but from alignment, from knowing what truly matters and guarding it fiercely. In a culture that glorifies the spotlight, Cameron Diaz chose the light within, and somehow, by stepping out of the frame, she became more inspiring than ever before. Cameron Diaz's decision to walk away from Hollywood wasn't just personal, it became symbolic. For many women who had grown up watching her on screen, her choice to prioritize peace over pressure was revolutionary. In an era obsessed with productivity, youth, and perfection, she became a reminder that enough doesn't mean everything. Fans admired her not for another hit movie, but for her honesty, the way she spoke about aging without fear, about saying no without guilt, about choosing stillness in a culture addicted to chaos. Women who had chased their own impossible standards began to see her story as permission to pause, to breathe, to live. She often says she doesn't want to be admired for quitting, but for choosing happiness. "I didn't retire because I couldn't keep up," she said. "I retired because I didn't want to." That statement resonated deeply with anyone who's ever felt trapped by success people who achieved everything the world told them to and still felt empty inside. Her books, interviews, and podcasts on wellness and mindfulness became small blueprints for modern balance. She talks about rest as strength, boundaries as self-respect, and authenticity as the truest form of confidence. Without intending to, she became a kind of mentor for women who wanted to reclaim control of their own narratives, proving that walking away isn't failure. Sometimes it's freedom. Cameron Diaz didn't just leave Hollywood, she showed others that you can leave anything that no longer serves your soul, and that, perhaps, is her greatest performance yet. Cameron Diaz's story is not about retreat, it's about reinvention. She didn't disappear into obscurity. She built a second act filled with meaning, creativity, and purpose. The courage it takes to start over, especially after dominating an industry for 2 decades, is extraordinary. But Cameron did it quietly, with grace. She often says her greatest lesson came when she realized that success isn't a straight line, it's a series of evolutions. "We don't stop growing when we stop working," she explained. "We stop growing when we stop listening to ourselves." Her shift from movie star to entrepreneur, from celebrity to advocate for well-being, it wasn't about rejecting her past, it was about expanding her identity beyond it. She found her voice in health, sustainability, and authenticity, topics once dismissed as unglamorous in Hollywood but now central to modern life. She learned to replace validation with purpose, replacing fame's noise with the quiet satisfaction of creating something real, and that reinvention became contagious. Younger stars now cite Cameron Diaz as an influence not for her box office hits, but for her bravery. She paved the way for a new kind of success, one that honors both ambition and peace. The woman who once defined effortless beauty now defines effortless being. Her reinvention wasn't about chasing relevance, it was about embracing reality. And by doing so, she proved that endings aren't always exits. Sometimes they're beginnings disguised as goodbyes. Even after a decade away, Hollywood couldn't let Cameron Diaz go. Every few months, a rumor circulates about her big comeback. Studios still pitch her scripts, directors still name her as their dream collaborator, and fans still flood social media with nostalgia. The industry misses her not just for her talent, but for her presence. Cameron's energy was singular, radiant, funny, spontaneous. She could make comedy feel effortless and emotion feel authentic. That rare blend of humor and humanity left a gap no one has truly filled. Yet, for all the offers, she remains selective. She has no interest in fame for fame's sake. "If I do something again, it'll be because it feels right, not because the world wants it," she said. Her occasional returns, like her 2022 announcement to co-star with Jamie Foxx in Back in Action, feel less like a career restart and more like a reunion with an old friend. She's open to opportunities, but only on her terms. The difference now, she said, is that I own my time. Hollywood keeps calling, but Cameron doesn't rush to answer, and that restraint is part of her allure. In an industry built on constant visibility, her refusal to chase relevance is her power. She left when she was on top, and in doing so, she became something Hollywood rarely allows its stars to become: whole. The most surprising part of Cameron Diaz's story isn't that she walked away from fame, it's that she found peace afterward. For someone who spent decades being styled, scheduled, and scrutinized, her greatest act of rebellion was choosing imperfection. She no longer lives under constant performance. Her life now is about rhythm, not results. She often says she used to chase perfection in every form: perfect hair, perfect lines, perfect public image. But perfection, she discovered, is a trap that keeps you running on an endless treadmill of comparison. Stepping away from Hollywood allowed her to finally stand still. I had to unlearn the idea that I had to be perfect to be loved, she explained. That realization redefined her sense of beauty and purpose. She began practicing gratitude not as a morning mantra, but as a lifestyle. The peace she exudes today doesn't come from escaping reality, it comes from accepting it. She's learned to love the quiet, the wrinkles, the unfinished days. In that stillness, she found something the world's applause could never give her: self-respect. Friends describe her as serene yet vibrant, someone who radiates calm but still laughs loudly and easily. She gardens, cooks, drinks her Avaline wine with friends, and enjoys the little chaos of motherhood. It's not glamorous, but it's genuine, and that's exactly what she wanted. Peace, for Cameron, isn't passive. It's a daily practice, one that took decades to earn. She once said, "The best thing I ever did was stop trying to live up to an idea of myself that never really existed." That, perhaps, is her true happy ending. Cameron Diaz's journey resonates because it mirrors a truth many people avoid: success doesn't always equal satisfaction. Her choice to step back from an industry that defined her was a reminder that fulfillment comes from within, not from validation. She gave the world entertainment, then she gave herself back her life. Her story teaches that reinvention is never too late and that it doesn't require starting over, only starting within. She proved that letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. In an age where visibility is mistaken for value, she became a counter-narrative, one that says peace, privacy, and authenticity are worth more than any award. She also redefined womanhood in the spotlight. In a culture that glorifies youth and busyness, Cameron became a symbol of graceful rebellion. She showed that maturity can be magnetic, that rest can be revolutionary, and that choosing yourself can be the most radical act of all. Her legacy will always include the laughter she gave us on screen, but it now extends far beyond that. It lives in her books, her business, her family, and her willingness to live honestly, a legacy of courage disguised as calm. Cameron Diaz didn't fade away, she evolved, and in that evolution lies a lesson for anyone chasing happiness. Sometimes you have to step out of the spotlight to finally see yourself clearly. Cameron Diaz once ruled Hollywood, now she rules her own world. She traded premieres for peace, scripts for stillness, and applause for authenticity. What she found was not an ending, but a beginning, one built on laughter, love, and freedom. Her journey reminds us that success means nothing without serenity, and fame means little without fulfillment. She walked away, not to escape, but to return to herself, her family, her truth, and in doing so, she became a living testament to the power of reinvention. Today, she's not chasing trends or titles. She's chasing moments, bedtime giggles, garden afternoons, quiet dinners with people who see Cameron, not the star. If her story inspired you, remember this: sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pause, listen to your soul, and choose a life that feels like yours even if the world doesn't understand it. Like, share, and subscribe for more real stories about stars who found light not in the spotlight but in themselves.